Hi, this is Daniela Wolf with Bestie Life, the podcast, and this is your community to support you through the little and not so little events that make up your day-to-day life. From the I've got this moments to the I just can't moments. We are here to empower all women to find and develop the skills they need to find peace, balance, and the bliss in their busy. Through solo episodes as well as interviews with amazing women who share their journey and their story and how it works for you. I hope you find the inspirations to make you laugh, think, as well as maybe rethink what you thought you knew, and connect as we realize that we are all living similar ups and downs and don't have to do it alone. So excited for you to hear this episode, and thanks so much for joining me today. Hi, this is Daniela with Bestie Life, the podcast. And today I am so excited for you to get to meet Emma O'Brien. I was on her podcast a little while ago. And so I'm excited to reconnect, have a great conversation, and put the spotlight on her. If you haven't met Emma, she is a certified HeartMath coach and Martha Beck Wayfinder trained life coach. She blends intuitive and no-nonsense practical coaching skills with her expertise in helping clients shift their mindsets and change their lives for the better. She helps women get unstuck, stop people-pleasing, overcome overwhelm, and reignite their passions and purpose. So thank you so much, Emma, for joining us today.
Thank you for having me, Daniela. It's really lovely to connect with you again.
Yeah. So can you share a little bit more about your journey, like how long you've been doing that, as far as, what the process was? Because I know people just think like, oh, poof, it instantly happens. Someone decides they want to be a life coach, or they were doing something before they didn't love or whatever. How was that path for you?
So I've been an entrepreneur for 20, probably slightly more than 20 years now. So I started out as a photographer. I still have a photography business. So I photograph dogs when I have my other business hat on. And I think my own journey of figuring out work-life balance with my own business, I had an episode of burnout in 2016, which was absolutely hideous. And it took literally my health and almost my business falling apart for me to have a look and go, actually, do you know what? There's a lot of things that aren't working for me here. Mm-hmm. And I came to that point because I think I'd been doing what I'd always done, got myself extremely busy, ran out of extra hours to sell, knew I needed to change something, but had no idea what to change at all. And I ended up quite by accident coming across a business coach who helped me really completely redesign my business, my pricing, how I was going about things. There was a lot of mindset work, as you know, if you're making changes that are very big and are taking you in a different direction, there's an awful lot of mindset work that has to happen to get over the fear that comes up around that. So my own experience of being coached was, a great learning for how powerful being coached is and how powerful coaching is. And then as my photography business progressed, I started getting people asking me about kind of business mentoring and helping them with their photography businesses, which I did for a while. And I got to a point where I thought, this is fine. I can help people who are just slightly behind me, but I don't have the toolkit to really help anybody else if they come to me. So I had a look at what coaching certifications are out there to really upskill my coaching toolkit. And I started off with the HeartMath coaching, which is essentially it's a set of emotional regulation tools, if it's put very basically, that help you to manage stress. Because if I look at my own journey, a lot of the burnout was caused by huge stress about finances and not knowing what to do and being overwhelmed. And that's what drew me to HeartMath, because I thought, here's a really great toolkit for helping you calm the physical and mental stress so you can think a bit more clearly to do something different. And from there I did the Martha Beck course, and here I am. So it's been a journey, and I think it's been my own. So I bring a lot of my own experience to the table with the coaching. I like to coach people who are stuck. I like to coach people who are stressed and overwhelmed, because I've been there and I've moved myself out of it. So I know what it's like, and I also know what's needed to move people through it. So this is work I'm incredibly passionate about.
Yeah. And I love that you focus on those two pieces of your mindset
and the emotional regulation as far as the stress management. Because I think a lot of times people jump directly to the actions. And so then they're doing something new, but they end up exactly in the same place again. They're stressed, they're overwhelmed and burnout because it wasn't the thing they were doing that caused those things. It's the way they were approaching it, the way they were thinking about it, and the way they were responding.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. I think this is the thing with stress, and my own process is folks need to have access to the emotional regulation tools to calm the physical stress response. I think the problem is you can get stuck in a stress cycle. You're having thoughts about, I'm overwhelmed, I'm worried about money, I'm stressed, which causes the physical symptoms of stress, increased heart rate, that feeling of anxiety. And you can't think straight when you're in that state. So you need something to be able to calm you when you're really, really overwrought and stressed, so you can access a better way of thinking. And then when you've got that better way of thinking, you can start to have a look at, okay, what in my life is causing me the stress? And what changes do I need to make to reduce the stressors? I think this is something that I have noticed. There's a lot of people talking about nervous system regulation and emotional regulation. It's a tool. It doesn't take the problem away. It's part of the solution. The fundamental solution to dealing with stress and overwhelm and burnout, as you and I both know, is you have to get rid of or reduce and deal with the circumstances that are causing the thoughts you're having that are making you stressed. And that's often a big process. For me, the process of redesigning my business took a few months to get that in place. And I didn't really see the results from those changes for a good 6 months, really, from when I started the work. And I think this is a thing, is often there's quite big things that need to change to reduce stress in the long term. And I think that's where the power of coaching comes in, of working with someone who can guide you on, because it is a journey, and it can be a tricky journey. The messy middle is horrible. And I think that's the bit where you kind of, the coaching support's just so valuable.
Right. And I love it that you really do talk about the stress cycle, because I know a lot of times, people just think of stress as how we think about things and that mental piece of it, but that is that stress cycle. And I work with so many, with my students at my full-time job, we talk about the stress cycle because a lot of times they'll come in and they're like crying and they don't know why, or their, stomach's always hurting. They always have headaches. And I said, when it comes to that stress cycle, you need to close the cycle, and you need to not only do it from the way you're thinking, but physically, your body's going to look for a release for the stress it's been carrying. Your stress is in your shoulders and your neck and your hips and all these body parts. And if you don't intentionally direct physically where that stress is going to go, your body's going to decide for you. I have a kid who is nervous about throwing up, and I'm like, well, then let's find another way to release the stress so that your body doesn't choose that option for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're totally right. And I really love that you've brought this kind of earthly vehicle piece up, because we forget this body that we're in carts the stress around. If you're having stressful thoughts, that stress causes a hormonal reaction in your body. It causes the release of cortisol, and chronic stress means you've got cortisol being released all the time, which causes inflammation, which causes all sorts of things: headaches, stomach aches, gastric issues. And ultimately, if it's left unchecked, it can lead to disease, like cancer and autoimmune conditions. Unfortunately, I can hold my hand up and say my body did collapse on me as a result of the stress I was carrying. So in the midst of my burnout episode, I continued to keep trying to work. Because I'm thinking, if I don't work, because I'm running the belief system, if I don't work, I don't earn money, I don't get paid, something awful is going to happen. So I tried to push through the burnout, and I was lifting something to put it in my car, and I put my back out. So I literally ended up in hospital for 3 days. Thankfully, I was very fortunate. It was nothing permanent, but my life flashed before my eyes, because I thought, oh God, I have not been looking after myself. I've broken myself now. I can't stand up currently, so I can't work. And if I can't recover, my career is over anyway. And this career that I've been working myself into the ground for and not stopping. And it was a real reminder that A, you need to rest. B, you need to look after your body and start to notice the signs and signals it gives you that you're stressed. Because I think, and I don't know about you, Daniela, I'd love to know. I have worked with coaching clients who, until we start to use the emotional regulation techniques, they have no idea that they're constantly stressed until you calm it down enough and they go, oh, this is new. What the hell? I didn't realize actually how stressed I was.
Well, because unfortunately we normalize it. And unfortunately it's, it takes something physically happening, like your back. Ariana Huffington talks about, she collapsed from lack of sleep, things like that. Until we have that physical response, that heart attack, that big, massive moment, we ignore so many of those symptoms. And I don't know about you, but I'm trying to how do we shift that priority, that focus, that spotlight on that emotional part and changing all those other pieces so that we don't only pay attention to stress when there's something physically wrong. Because unfortunately, a lot of those treatments also are based on the symptoms. Oh, you're coming in with heart pain. Let's just do a medication. Let's do this. Let's do that. As opposed to, well, let's take a couple steps back and see what about your lifestyle is contributing to that. Do you see that?
I totally agree with you. I think this is what's missing from a lot of medical professionals because they're not taught it. I was doing some research about the gut-brain relationship that happens when our gut is effectively our second brain. And there was I'm just trying to think it was a doctor who was talking about the fact that he didn't know about the relationship between gut health and brain health because they're not taught it at medical school. They're coming from what they're taught in their textbooks. They don't look holistically because they're not taught to look holistically. And I think this is something that needs to shift. I think it is starting to shift. Of the first question should be when somebody is presenting with classic stress symptoms, what's going on in your life that's causing this? Has something changed? Is something worrying you? Because often if you just ask those simple questions, somebody will say, well, my marriage is in a shambles, or I've just lost my job, or something. And what people need is, I think sometimes people do in the short term need medication to help them get out of a hole. I think that's the role it plays. It's not, I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but there should also be something else alongside it of, here's a mindfulness course that might be really helpful for you to just help you get in touch with yourself, listen to yourself and find out what you want. Here's a meditation course that might just help you calm down enough to be able to think of an alternative solution to what's going on.
It's not always just hormones. I think that's another thing that gets jumped to way too quickly. But that's why, I try and scream from the rooftops about self-care and changing the perception and the stereotypes and the myths around self-care, because this isn't fluffy. This isn't luxury. This is the necessary daily wellness maintenance that you need to do to survive.
Absolutely. And I think, we talked about it when you were on my podcast, is self-care effectively is preventative care. And it doesn't have to be crazy going to the spa every 5 minutes. It is as simple as having 10 minutes of quiet time in the morning, as simple as making more mindful choices about what you're eating. Because also this is another thing, is what you eat has a huge impact on how you feel. I think it's 90% of our serotonin is made in our gut. And if you're just eating sugar and crap, it's no wonder you feel awful. But I think these are the questions that are not being asked in the doctor's office, because often they don't have time and they don't know to ask them. So this is why we're having these conversations. So folks listening can say, actually, hang on a minute, there are some other alternative options rather than me just having to add medication on, like you've said, to calm the symptoms. I think the real work is to have a look at, you've got symptoms. What are these symptoms telling you that needs to change?
Right. And obviously it's different for each individual as far as what those symptoms are, how it's going to affect you, and then what kind of things you need to incorporate. But if someone was just listening to this episode, what would be maybe a couple of takeaways they could look at as far as some actionable steps to at least put their foot in the door of thinking about stress differently?
Yeah, I think you need to start to have a look at just taking a bit of time each day to get in touch with what's happening internally for you. How are you feeling? And sometimes something as simple as just sitting with that and noticing what comes up and naming it. I think a lot of people who are stressed feel very overwhelmed.
Mm-hmm.
They feel very frustrated. They might feel very angry. They might feel very lonely. And just to start to notice what's coming up for you and to start to listen to what's happening internally. Your body will tell you if you've got a constant knot in your stomach, what is that about? And you can just sit with it. And even if you have, I think journaling is one of the most powerful tools. It's something I like to do. If you've got some funny sensation that keeps coming up for you, you can start to dialogue with it, and you can ask it, what are you trying to tell me? What are you all about? What do you need? Because often you'll find you'll get a response of, actually, I need a break. I need some time off. If you've got a crazy schedule, you need to be carving out downtime in there. I think, we've touched on it. This hustle culture has become the norm, and we have to stop glorifying crazy work hours. Because I think the conclusion I've come to with it, and it's a question I asked myself when I had burnout, was, what am I doing all of this for? If I'm working so hard to not have any time to enjoy anything because I can't switch off, what the hell is the point? And it's just starting to really evaluate, what are you doing, and does it really serve you in the long run? And if it doesn't, what needs to change?
Right. And I love that you talk about, with anxiety, it's not talked enough about the fact that the solution, how you work with anxiety, is not to get rid of it. It's not to eliminate it. It's to learn to sit with it, to get comfortable with it, to understand and have a relationship with it. Because if not, you're always going to keep running. You're always going to keep trying, something different, as opposed to really addressing the issue.
Yeah, absolutely. And anxiety, when it's in a normal range, is a healthy response to things. It's there to tell us something's not quite right here. But when just getting up in the morning makes you feel anxious, we've got anxiety and overload, but it is also still telling you something. If you're waking up feeling anxious, what is that telling you? What in your life is not serving you? What's happening there? It's a signpost that something needs to be investigated.
Yeah, no, I love that you, like I said, bring all of this up, because again, it all can sound scary and overwhelming to people, and it's isolating. Anxiety is isolating. That stress and overwhelm is so isolating. And so once we start breaking down those barriers, having these conversations, seeing that the way to approach it can be very simple, such as, like you said, journaling. I love the part of journaling, not just getting the things out, but when you reread those things, because you're actually able to hear them in a different voice, a different perspective, almost as if a friend were talking to you, and we are so much kinder to our friends than ourselves. And it just breaks down that cycle and those barriers to really helping people kind of break through. So I love that you talk about that part of it. What about then when procrastination gets in the way too? Because I think sometimes people know these things, but they don't always do them.
Yeah, absolutely. I think procrastination is such an interesting one. I think there's often a few reasons people procrastinate and I think one of the big ones is, if I do this work, what is on the other side of that? And if you start to listen to, let's come back to the anxiety, that you wake up every day and you're feeling really anxious, and you start to dialogue with it, and you start to listen to it, and it sort of tells you what you know, but you've been trying to ignore, that actually you're in a marriage that doesn't serve you anymore. Then you have some choices to make and some work to do. And I think that's often why we procrastinate, because we know we need to do some big changes, or we know if we make the big changes, we don't know what's on the other side of that. And I think it's often a protective measure to help us avoid uncertainty. But when you avoid uncertainty, you stay in your zone. It's probably, I would call it a comfort zone, but most comfort zones are the most excruciating places to be. But we know the comfort zone. We don't know when we do the work. We don't know the life on the other side of that. We can't predict it. We don't know. So it keeps us safe for that reason. I think sometimes it can be a worry of, I don't know if I have the tools to be able to make the change. So if I don't know if I can do it, I'm just not going to do it. So again, procrastination is a really interesting one to just be curious about. And, you can ask the question, why is it that I'm not doing the thing I know I need to do?
Yeah.
What is the benefit of me not doing the thing? And another great question to ask is, what is the cost of me not doing the thing?
Yes.
Sometimes if you can start to look at it and go, oh, this has actually got a very heavy cost. It might be a financial cost, it might be an emotional cost, but if you can then start to reframe it in those terms, sometimes that's enough for you to go, this is not good. I need to move now. You've just got to motivate yourself to move sometimes, I think, with procrastination.
I love those two questions. What is keeping you from doing it? And what is the cost? I mean, how powerful that answer typically is. And it's uncomfortable, I think, when we hear it, but man, that's got to be momentous as far as helping people transition and move out of that place.
Yeah, absolutely. I think if you look at, we've got what, 4 months left of 2024. And I think if you have a look at, for anybody who's had some goals and is still procrastinating and thinking, oh God, the end of the year is coming, what's the cost to you of not taking action now? Do you want to be in the same place at the end of the year? If not, let's get, time to get going. And it's also, I think things can seem very overwhelming. And if you've got a task that seems gargantuan, you're going to put it off because it's just too big. So break it down into small steps and have a look at what is the tiniest little step I can do today to start on the journey towards making the change I want to have happen. Is make it so manageable that it's easy for you to do. Because I think that's another thing. Sometimes we set ourselves these huge goals and then you're just like, there's no way I can do that. I'd liken it to, I always amuse myself when I say this, because I climbed Kilimanjaro in 2013. And how do you know someone's climbed a mountain? They'll tell you. I can remember looking at it, getting dropped off at the bottom of the national park and seeing the mountain miles in the distance. I remember looking at it and thinking, there is no way in hell I'm getting to the top of that in 6 days' time. It's just not possible. It's too far away. And then you just break it down into, it's one foot in front of the other. Mm-hmm. And one hour at a time, one day at a time. And before you know it, you're there. But you have to sometimes just take a step back from the end goal and go, okay, what do I need to do that's in front of me now? And just make it easy.
Absolutely. Yeah. Nobody likes to do hard things, but when we make it easy, it's so much simpler to just incorporate into your day-to-day, and as part of that, I always love to ask, what are some of the things that you are doing on a day-to-day basis to help maintain that balance for yourself to kind of address your own stress?
Yeah. So I make sure I have some time in the morning. I go and sit in the garden. I take my journal. I take a cup of coffee and I just go and sit and journal. What's my intention for the day? If I've got stuff coming up, I'll sit and just journal through what's coming up for me, what's going on. I'm feeling angry, let's say, for instance. Why am I angry? What is this about? What's the insight for me here? What's the learning? And just to take the time to process through your stuff. I think journaling in the morning, and you can also do it in the evening if you've had a heavy day as well. Just 10 minutes is all you need. You don't need to make it like a crazy 3-hour exercise, unless you want to. It's just to process through what's happening. And again, like I've said, setting an intention for the day is very powerful, because it just gives you a way of that you intend to move through the day. So if you tend to move through the day calmly, great. My intention this morning was to, I've been doing some shamanic work at the moment, so I'm training to be a shaman. So this morning, my intention was to have to get in touch more with my magic today, and just to be more present, and to kind of how can I be coming from a space of gratitude. It's small things like that. I know some people have like a 2-hour long morning routine, which must be fantastic if you've got that time, but it doesn't need to be hectic like that. It can be 10 minutes, just even if you're sitting quietly, mindfully having a coffee or your morning beverage of choice in the garden, listening to the birds and just being with yourself quietly.
Yeah, it is that simple and that short, which is great. You don't need a fancy journal planner. It can be a notebook and everything. And I love that you brought up gratitude as well, because that's another underutilized form of self-care that I love to talk about and ask my guests. What would you say are the top couple of things that you're the most grateful for?
So I'm very, very grateful for time to sit in my garden in the morning. Grateful for the home I'm in. Grateful for being able to have conversations with people like you and talking about this work, and grateful to have done enough of my own work to be able to show up in the world and be able to share this work with other people.
Yeah, no, I love that. So how can people find you, Emma? How can they work with you?
So you can find me on my website, which is emmaobriencoach.com. You can find out lots of, there's a couple of free masterclasses on there that you can watch. You can also come and connect with me on Instagram, which is at @EmmaObrienCoach. I'm quite active on there. And then I've got a podcast, which is the Lemons and Pineapples podcast, which of course you were also a guest on. So you can come and listen to me talk about all sorts of things on there as well.
That's fantastic. And all those links will be live in the show notes below. So thank you so much, Emma. I loved getting back together and chat again, and everything that you were able to share with my listeners.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks so much again for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Please let me know any questions or comments that you have. Also, if you can please leave an Apple 5-star review so that this episode can be shared with more women. There's 2 quotes that I love. Alone we may be strong, but together we are stronger, as well as when women support each other, incredible things happen. So let's be stronger and incredible together, as well as maybe just have some fun along the way. Thanks so much and talk to you soon. Bye.